Hey there, Bruce, and welcome back to Remember 11 Age of Infinity. We left ourselves on a bit of a cliffhanger again. Actually, that's becoming pretty common as things are starting to ramp up towards the end here, but let's just carry on, shall we? You don't understand a thing, do you? That's right. We died at the end of the last episode, and I've jumped back to make a different choice in the hope that this won't get us killed, but it might. And then we'll have to jump back further, you know. Tell you that Hattori and Inabushi are different people. You're the one that doesn't understand. This girl isn't the one who killed Junichika. She isn't Inabushi Kaiko. I'm so sick of hearing that. You want me to forgive her because she has DID, right? Because she was mentally unstable at the time. But she can't be... Yeah, so this is the same. I'm telling you, you don't understand. Her name is Suzukage Hattori, one of the passengers who boarded Flight 18. She squinted until her eyes were thin slits. It was like she was trying to see me better. What are you saying? I'll explain it all. But before that, could you please put the knife down? Mitsumi lowered her head, as if pondering something. She's already stabbed us. But she raised it again right away. I can't do that. After coming this far, I can't go back. Mitsumi-san. Stop it, I don't want to hear anymore. I'll kill you, that woman, and then myself. I'm sorry, Yukido-kun. Goodbye. Mitsumi once again raised the knife. You get another choice. That means we have the potential to change things here, maybe? Dive for her feet? I dived for her feet. She fell. I straddled her, trying to hold her down. Let go of me. That's how it kind of happened before, right? Or, I don't know. She struggled beneath me. The knife was still clutched in her hands. I had to get it away from her. The moment I thought that, with a great swing of her arm, she cut... That's right. Oh yeah, we did. This is the same as before, right? And... dead. Right. Reload. Let's try that again, shall we? Whoops. Yes, infinity loop. Thank you for that. God damn it. I thought that seemed familiar. It seemed familiar because we were being there last time. When we got murdered last time. Resolved myself. I don't see how that's going to help, but sure. I resolved myself. I covered Hattori's body with my own. I shut my eyes. I gritted my teeth and tensed my back, bracing myself for the moment to come. But nothing happened. A stinging pain still penetrated my back, but aside from that, I was still untouched. I timidly opened my eyes. I turned around. Mitsumi wasn't looking in our direction. Junichi? She murmured softly. Following her gaze, I saw the figure of a boy beyond the fallen shelves. It was Yuni. Junichi, why are you here? With a stern expression on his face, Yuni climbed over the shelves towards us. He was staring straight at Itsumi's arm. A knife covered in blood was still suspended from it. You can't do this, Yuni calmly told her. His tone was gentle, soothing. I don't know what Satoru did, but you can't do something like this. Satoru really isn't a bad person. Junichi, Mitsumi had said it. Junichi. Had she lost her sanity during the rampage and now saw a phantom before her? She was seeing the image of her dead son imposed over Yuni. Okay, will you stop now? But Junichi, are you really fine with that? Yuni's expression turned dubious, unsure of what to do about being called Junichi. His eyes flickered in my direction. I silently nodded. Yes, I am. He undoubtedly understood the situation, as he answered without correcting her. Are you forgiving her? Even though what she did to you was so cruel, is it alright to forgive her? It's fine now. More than that, I'm sad at how much you've changed, Carly. Huh? Always kind and calm. Always soothing me, worrying about me. I love that side of you, Carly. I don't have a mother, so that's why I thought of you as my mother, Carly. His voice slowly choked up with tears. Itsumi's was immobile, awash in the reverberations of his voice. But the Carly in front of me now isn't like that at all. You've turned into someone scary. I hate it. Carly, I don't want to see you like this. Itsumi's thin back began to tremble. Human warmth returned to her face. A single tear fell from her red eyes. Won't you go back to the old Carly? Won't you hold me again? My mum's disappeared after all, hasn't she? Junichi. The knife fell from Mitsumi's hand. She rushed over to him and took his small body in her arms. Junichi, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Mummy couldn't bear it after you died. I just couldn't forget about you. Forgive me, Junichi. Forgive your mother. Mitsumi's tears fell without end. I drew Hattori close and embraced her. It's okay now. It's all over, I said in a whisper. Hattori had her face pressed against my chest, crying loudly. The sound of their sobbing resonated together, echoing in the sullen air. Have we got a big slash down our back? Are we gonna die? Should we get that looked at? Infections are silent killers, you know. It took a while for Itsumi to regain her composure. Present time, 1:36 p.m. We walked together under the clear, white winter sky. After days of fine weather, the fallen snow had hardened. I walked ahead of her, trampling down the snow first so she could have an easier time walking through it. She followed me in silence. Once we reached the top of the hill, we stopped for a rest. The sky was perfectly clear, a never-ending mantle of blue. I brought her along because I wanted to show her the sky's radiance. Itsumi sat down in the snow and hung her head. I stood next to her and idly kicked at the snow. It didn't scatter like fresh powder. It broke into countless fragments in the air and sprinkled back down onto the hill. The pain to my back had greatly diminished. Hattori had treated me. The wound wasn't particularly deep and I hadn't needed stitches. The one who'd inflicted that injury was Itsumi, the one right here next to me. But I didn't resent her for that. I wasn't expecting an apology either. There was only one thing I wished from her. That she returned to her former self, that alone. My wish was exactly the same as what Yuni had said in the story. A gentle, kind Itsumi full of maternal affection. Before I knew it, I'd become fascinated with that Itsumi. That's why I wanted her to return to the way she'd been before. I was hospitalized. Before I even opened my mouth, she began to speak of her own accord. As to why, I don't really need to tell you, do I? I didn't answer. Still gazing up at the blue sky, I silently listened to her story. Junichi's death? And as if that wasn't enough, last year in January he left this world too. Yomogi-san, you mean? Yes, that's right. I was already pregnant by then. I'll never forget about Junichi no matter what, but that new life inside me, for both me and for him, meant hope. Junichi had worried about us and granted us a new baby. That's what we felt. Even before the first embryonic traces began to form, we loved them so much. Deeply, deeply. I believed I could sacrifice anything for them. Those two little lives were priceless. The two babies to us were an invaluable hope. Two? I was interrupting you, but I had to ask. I instinctively looked down. That's right, two. Or maybe I haven't told you. You mean twins? Yes. Fraternal twins. A boy and a girl. But in the photos, it was one of them. No matter which photo you looked at, it was always a similar looking baby, wasn't it? I see. I've been under the impression that those 4 photos all depicted the same baby, but that wasn't the case. Separate photos of either the boy or the girl. I get it. So it was those fraternal twins who were born last August. Something bothering you? No. Sorry, please go on. I invited her to continue, but her lips didn't move. Looking into her eyes, she seemed engrossed in thought. Was it because I'd unnecessarily interrupted her? She'd shut herself away in her own world. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't find the words. I could only wait for her to start again. And before long. But you see, he died. Her next sentence was delivered in a voice heavy with grief. In the end, before he got to see the 2 babies, he followed after Junichi. I felt like I'd been left behind. The sorrow, the loneliness and the pain. I tasted a despair those words can't even describe. So I cursed God. God and the fate he'd laid out for us. It was inevitable I'd make her heart sick. Junichi couldn't murdered, and over the next 2 years, little by little, that horrible memory began to fade. And around the same time, 2 little lives were growing in her belly. She'd finally found a ray of hope, but it hadn't lasted. Yomogi died caught in an avalanche. After that, Itsumi became a seething mass of hatred, and the originator of all her unhappiness was Inabushi Kaiko. What happened to the babies? Like, where are they now? Itsumi swore revenge on Inabushi and at the same time was sucked down into a whirlpool of malice. She lost the ability to make the right choices. It was a tiny little private room, you know. I was locked up alone. It was a deeply lonely place underground. In Moegi village, in the Hiwa district of Hokkaido. Hotarubi. A place underground called Hotarubi. I was discharged from the hospital on July 16th last year. I gave birth to the twins a month later. My babies are going to be brought here tomorrow, to this island. I guess the thought of her babies had overwhelmed her emotionally. She suddenly began to cry. Her tears carved tiny circles in the white snow where they fell. Great big drops ran endlessly down her cheeks. The children. I want to see them. I want to see them. I want to see them. In the rays of sunshine that shone down upon us, her figure glimmered with a divine light. A white veil surrounding her. A pure, spotless white. The colour of nothing. The colour of beginnings. Perhaps she was already being born anew in this world. That's certainly what the scene before me looked like. Itsumi was a mother. Just a mother wishing for the happiness of her 3 children. I knelt beside her and took her hand. She buried her face on my shoulder. I'm sorry, she muttered. And I lied to you. I'm not a psychiatrist. But I didn't care about that anymore. I'm sorry. Her hot tears soaked through my shirt as she continued to weep. Not even a month had passed since the winter solstice. The sunset came early to Aosagi Island. The perfectly clear winter sky was dyed in a myriad gradation of red from west to east. A bewitchingly clear sunset. For 4 days straight, Aosagi Island had been blessed with fine weather. But at Mount Akakura, the snowstorm still raged. According to the magazine article, the weather won't improve until dawn on the 17th. Then, at 6:53 AM on the same day, an avalanche will occur at location X. Present time, 4:15 PM. That time drew nearer every moment, but there was nothing I could do now. The uni of the shelter cabin had clearly stated that the next transfer would occur tomorrow at 4:48 AM. If I chose to believe him, that meant I had just over 12 hours. In order to rescue the 4 shelter cabin refugees, a space-time transfer was essential. The only thing I could do now was wait. I went back inside. Even now I couldn't get accustomed to seeing the destroyed state of the living room, but I didn't feel the slightest desire to tidy it up either. I sat down on the ripped-up couch and started thinking about matters at SPHIA. After her confession on the hill, Itsumi had quietly returned to her room. She'd taken a sedative and was now sound asleep. Yuni was there too, watching over her. Hattori had locked herself in her room and wasn't coming out. She's holding on to the knife that Itsumi had with her, I guess for self-defense, and won't put it down for a moment. I doubted Itsumi had any desire to kill her anymore, and although I insisted upon that fact to Hattori, I was unable to soothe her. She'd already been close to death once. I suppose a reaction like this was unavoidable. Yeah, pretty understandable. It's all well and good that Itsumi's given up on trying to kill her, but things between the 4 of us here are still very awkward. The hearts of everyone at SPHIA, mine included, have darkened. We misunderstood one another and began to see suspicious goings-ons around every corner. Yes, misunderstood. This is all one big misunderstanding. I'm not the one who killed Enomoto, and Hattori wasn't the one who took Junichi's life. Consequently, Yuni had no reason to fear me, and Itsumi's hatred of Hattori had never been anything more than a horrible mistake from the start. So if I tell them what I know, the truth about the space-time transfer, would I be able to open the path to reconciliation? But still, no matter how I insisted, I don't think they'd believe me at all. And, on the off chance that they actually did believe me, the 3 of them might stop being so paranoid, but I just couldn't get past my lingering distrust. Because someone is definitely after my life and the culprit is related to the space-time transfer. These 2 women still haven't escaped my suspicion. Of course, I trust Itsumi now, but I have no idea what she thought of me before this morning. Suzukage Hattori's consciousness isn't in Ibushi Kaiko. She merely happened to be on that ill-fated flight HAL 18. And by what you could only call the whims of fate, she was unfortunately caught up in the transference phenomenon. In that regard, she's just another unlucky victim in this chain of strife. Of course, there's never been blood on her hands before now, I'd wager. Hattori's consciousness, as far as I can say, is innocent. However, while that may be true, I can't say definitely that she's not the one behind the attempted murders. Her aberrant speech and conduct up to this point have given rise to plenty of suspicion. I don't know what her motives are, but I can't shake these lingering doubts that she might be capable of it after all. Utsumi Kali. Utsumi tried to kill Hattori, not me. But what if, at the time she was putting her plan into practice, she felt that I was in the way? Would the thought of getting rid of all possible obstacles have crossed her mind? I didn't want to suspect her, but I can't deny the possibility that she's the culprit. Kusuda Yuni. Regarding Yuni, I guess I can rule him out. I don't need to explain why. I believe in him, that's enough. Even if I went out of my way to find a reason to suspect him, he has no motive. And he's got an alibi for the incident at the clock tower. I'm sure it's impossible for the culprit to be Yuni. Lastly, Enomoto Naoya, the clock tower, the bathtub, my left arm. It's possible for Enomoto to be responsible for all of these, but there's one thing he couldn't have possibly done. The situation with the DMT and the MAO inhibitor. My body drank that liquid yesterday morning, after Enomoto's death. Therefore, in this case, there's no way that he could have a partner. Even if he was the one who went after me the first 3 times, the riddle of the DMT and MAO inhibitor remains unsolved. No, wait. Suddenly I remembered what I'd heard Hattori say yesterday. And the person who took them is you yourself. That's right, that's it. There are more than just 5 people at SPHIA. Fuyukawa Kokoro. She too could be considered one of the people at SPHIA. There are limits to the time she can spend here, but it's undeniable that her consciousness took control of my body. Who killed Inamoto Naoya? Fuyukawa Kokoro. Who destroyed the living area? Kokoro again. Who drank the DMT and MAO inhibitor? According to Hattori, Kokoro. Who received the sleeping pills called Zegtamin from Utsumi? Kokoro, of course. Then who wounded my left arm? I don't know. Hattori proposed self-mutilation as the cause, but finally who pushed me off the clock tower? It's not Kokoro. Did she jump off herself? No, that's impossible. Because the transference phenomenon hadn't even happened yet. Besides, I saw a shadow up on the clock tower. And that same shadow stabbed me in the arm too. I saw someone clutching a knife in the dark. I don't get it. Who the hell is it that's trying to kill me? I writhed and tore at my hair. Some kind of clue. I sat for a while, surveying the ruined living area. The sofa had been ripped to shreds, its stuffing exposed like entrails. The table had been flipped over, the chairs broken, and the computer monitor knocked to the floor. The glass divider between the living area and the dining area had been shattered into tiny pieces. Huh? In an instant, a spark ignited in my head. Go on. That's right. How could I overlook something so simple? Something to do with her left-handedness? I ran past the living area and jumped onto the dining area. Without hesitation, I ran down the stairs, nearly falling over several times. The basement storeroom. There's a south-facing door on the wall down there. A door leading to that small, dimly lit room where Inamoto lived. The door was still open, and into the small room enclosed by darkness. I stepped forward as though something was leading me there. Seventh day, isn't that the last day? Oh dude, we're nearly there. It's all coming to a head now. The row of monitors radiated a pale light. I sank into the armchair before the panel and crossed my legs atop the console. There was an image paused on the computer's display, the final shot of my body's rampage through the living area on the night of the 15th. The other monitors displayed the current goings-ons in each of the other rooms. The other 3 were all in their bedrooms. Utsumi was sitting on a chair, gazing at the photos of her babies. Yuni was asleep in his bed. Hattori was crouching in a corner of her room, silently gazing at the floor. All 3 of them seemed perfectly fine, although a bit crazy. I returned my gaze to the display before me. Back to the paused footage. I closed the playback screen and opened the pull-down menu. A list of the files stored in the database appeared. Among them were the records of every single event that had occurred in SPHIA from January 11th to January 16th, 2012. So we can see who killed us, or tried to kill us. That's right. I was only here for one reason alone. To check the video data. Just what had happened at SPHIA while my consciousness was away from my body. If I looked through all the footage, then I'd discover the answer right away. That's what I thought. I began to pore over the vast amount of data, although with that said, I'd never catch up if I played it back in real time. The approximate length of the footage I had to watch was approximately 100 hours. I couldn't help but fast forward through everything that didn't interest me, and eventually my analysis caught up to where I was right now. 10 hours had passed since I'd settled into this chair. I had a throbbing ache just below my eyes from staring at low-resolution footage for such a long time. I let out a big sigh and rubbed the inner corners of my eyes with my fingers. Present time, 2:37 AM. The date had changed to January 17th. What was Fuyukawa Kokoro's consciousness doing while in my body? How did the other 3 act when I wasn't there? It'd be fine if I clarified these mysteries to some extent, but there were still so many things I didn't know. Over 2 hours remained until my next transfer. I extracted the most important scenes and replayed the footage once again. Wednesday, January 11th. Time, 4:15 AM. Location, my room. Utsumi entered, pulling my snow-covered body inside. She removed my coat, which was soaked through and clinging to me. With the bath towel she brought from somewhere, she kindly wiped down my hair and face, then dragged my body, still unconscious, to the bed and laid it down. She took my pulse, checked my pupils, and placed her palm against my brow to check for fever. She covered me with a blanket, then Utsumi left the room. For a while after that, my body continued sleeping without the slightest tremor. Time, 8:02 PM. Location, my room. The room's window began to shake as violently as though hit by a sudden squall. The tremors began to settle, and at the same time the body lying on the bed got up. Its face was warped in agony, sorry. Utsumi appeared in the room again and gently coaxed the body back into bed. The two of them were having a conversation about something. The recording had no sound, thus I didn't know what they were talking about. It went without saying that the only other person there besides Utsumi was me. A body that looked like me. But I don't remember talking to Utsumi like this. Which meant that Kokoro's consciousness had entered my body. This is how the first transfer occurred. The time was 8:02 PM. SPHIA had jumped to the Mount Akakura of January 11th, 2011. In exchange, a circle with a radius of 110 meters, with the shelter cabin at its core, arrived at the Aosagi Island of 2012. At that moment, my consciousness, which remained at Aosagi Island, had entered Kokoro's body. Therefore, this footage showed SPHIA after it jumped to Mount Akakura of 2011. That was probably why the window shook just before the transfer. The atmospheric pressure inside SPHIA was high, while Mount Akakura's was much lower, so the window was hit by air pressure on both sides. Eventually, the air managed to escape from the institution through a crack somewhere, and the interior equalized with the exterior pressure. I mean, buildings aren't airproof, are they? By the way, there was one other thing that bothered me. Well, they're not around here anyway. All waterproof. There was one other thing that bothered me. If my current reasoning regarding the atmospheric pressure was correct, then how could I overlook something that big before? Even if my consciousness was always at Aosagi Island, when I transferred into Kokoro's body or returned to my own, I should have noticed pain in my ears or heard the sound of the draft caused by the escaping air, but I don't remember feeling something that out of place even once. Why was that? Was it because I never paid any attention to such a trivial change in the chaos that followed a transfer? Something was strange. I definitely felt a sense of discontent. All kinds of thoughts whirled inside my head. Like that, I disinterestedly kept viewing the footage. My body, Kokoro, left the room. I met Hattori in the dining area and discovered Yuni in a supposedly empty room. My body received a mirror from Yuni. It looked into the mirror and then began muttering something. It opened its mouth wide while tossing its head wildly as if screaming. My body began to get angry, building into a rage. Utsumi appeared in the room with a sedative, which he injected into me. My body crumpled on the spot, and a mobile container made out of flesh. Yuni and Utsumi carried it to my room. Time, 9:08 PM. Location, my room. My body began to stir as it lay on the bed. It got to its feet and stood in the middle of the room, looking around. It began to grope at its body, an expression of relief crossed its face. That's me. The image shown there was of me, in both body and consciousness. The second transfer. The time was 9:08 PM. What was about to happen after this had already been carved into my memory. The conversation with Yuni, Hattori, running down the basement storeroom, and me running after her. Everything was recorded there just as I remembered it. There was no need to confirm what I already knew. I fast-forwarded through the footage and went to the next scene. Time, 10:24 PM. Location, dining area. The 3 cups slipped out of my fingers. They shattered. The sound must have surprised it as my body twitched. It gazed obviously at the fragments strewn across the floor. Utsumi came up behind me. I turned around. No, that wasn't me. It was Fuyukawa Kokoro in my form. I have no memory of this encounter, so it had to be her. 10:24 PM, the third transfer occurred. Afterward, my body, Kokoro, exchanged a few words with Utsumi and Yuni before heading into its own bathroom. There weren't any cameras in there. It was a bathroom after all. I don't know what happened inside. There weren't any especially important scenes around here, so I jumped ahead. I didn't have the time to inspect everything. However, I couldn't overlook the scene that happened next. 10:45 PM. Location, Hattori's room. My body received the pills from Utsumi. Hattori was on the bed, looking tired. Yuni suddenly appeared before the camera. After exchanging a few words, my body held Yuni close and then left the room with him. 10:48 PM. Location, my room. My body took the pills and then went into the bathroom. Finally. I was entranced by the display, completely absorbed. Within the footage on screen, I disappeared from view. Afterward, there was just the empty room. Time, 11:19 PM. Location, my room. Someone's back appeared at the edge of the frame. It was Hattori. She came into the room and suddenly began to act very odd. She ran, but fell down after only 2 or 3 steps, and once she'd righted herself, she took only a few more before falling over backward. After repeating this several times, she planted herself on the floor. Her eyes were trained on the refrigerator. She suddenly clapped her hands together and laughed. Then she stood up, peeled the blanket off the bed, and started swinging it around wildly. But her foot got caught and she fell down again. The momentum caused the blanket to carry her to the floor with it. where it fell and covered her face. After struggling underneath it for a bit, she threw it off to the side. When she finally turned toward the camera, she was wearing a vacant expression. Her eyes darted around the room. Then she opened her mouth as wide as it would go while curling her hands into fists. Just like that, she went limp and fell onto the bed. This is the second time I'd seen this footage, and it still left me speechless. What exactly was she trying to do? Her strange movements continued for another 11 minutes. Time, 11:30 p.m. Location, my room. Suddenly, Hattori's back arched. She collapsed to the floor and her whole body went rigid. For several seconds, she lay there completely still, her back still curved. And just as quickly, she suddenly sat bolt upright. Clambering across the room, she began crawling, heading for a corner. She pressed her back flat against the wall, arms outstretched, then crouched and wrapped them around her knees. She looked around the room with a frightened expression on her face. I could see her fingers trembling. Deep wrinkles etched themselves into her brow, and her eyes restlessly scanned the room. 3 minutes later, Hattori timidly stood up and rushed for the door. She fled the room, and for a while after that, all the camera recorded was an empty room. Time, 11:37 p.m. Location, my room. Eventually my body came out through the bathroom door, walking unsteadily. My entire body was dripping wet. Feeling along the wall to support itself, it shambled forward, leaving puddles of water behind with every footstep. I remember taking those unsteady steps. After taking the Zegtamin, my control over my own body weakened. This meant that at this moment the display was showing the real me. The time of the transfer was most likely the same as Hattori, so 11:30 p.m. This was the fourth transfer, 2 round trips had occurred. The me in the recording was exhausted, and with the last of my strength I somehow made it to the bed. I passed out, my eyes snapped shut. After that, I slept until 6:30 the next morning. That ended the video data for the 11th. There were a number of things that had interested me, but for now I'll let them be. I could organise my thoughts on that later. I continued with the files from the 12th. January 12th, Thursday. The most important event occurred on this day was, of course, my arm being stabbed. I concentrated, narrowing my focus, and pressed fast forward. Time, 5:30 p.m. Location, my room. The camera had captured Utsumi's image. The window trembled in the strong wind. Utsumi was holding onto my arm. She began conversing with my body. Unease stole over Utsumi's face, and then, at that moment, white noise and static began to fill the screen, and the footage of the room began to waver. The wavering increased further until I could no longer make out anything on the screen. The image warped, the picture blurred. I rewound and played the scene back in slow motion and saw my body and Utsumi holding each other, crouched on the floor. An earthquake. Now that I thought about it, Kokoro had written a message like that to me. An earthquake occurred at SPHIA. Because of that, the breaker was tripped and a blackout occurred. It's fixed now though. Just like in her message, the screen suddenly went pitch black. It wasn't just the lights either. A complete blackout. The file itself was empty with nothing recorded in it. The cameras had probably stopped working because of the power failure. A sequence of utter darkness that could hardly be called footage continued on for several minutes. Eventually, the grainy particles on screen began to fire across the display and, as if washed down, the image on the screen became completely clear. The post-blackout sphere appeared on screen. Time, 7:10 p.m. Location, my room. The lights returned and my body squinted. Blood was gushing from its left arm. Utsumi was there as well. She took one look at my bleeding arm and fell into obvious dismay. Sorry. This might go without saying, but the me there at that moment wasn't me. The one moving my body was Fuyukawa Kokoro's consciousness, even during the earthquake. Although with that said, it wasn't as if the images from before and those appearing right now were continuous. I'd seen a shadowy figure in the darkness of the blackout, a knife grasped in its right hand. Going by this, between 5:30 and 7:10, Kokoro and I had switched places with each other twice, one round trip. That reminds me, at what time was my left arm injured anyway? By the time my consciousness returned to SPHIA, my arm had already bore a deep wound. In other words, the one in control of my body when I was stabbed wasn't me but Kokoro. Keeping this in mind, it would mean that the attack took place after the power failure but before the next transfer occurred. However, the blackout had prevented that crucial scene from being recorded. It was the same no matter how many times I tried playing it back. Nothing new jumped out at me from the recording. I gave up and closed the files for the 12th. Alright, let's wrap this one up here, because we've got a few days worth to go through, so I imagine this is going to take some time. I'm not sure if it's actually going to reveal anything, because there was a convenient blackout when the killer would have been revealed, you know. But you know, we shall see. Anyway, sorry I can't read very well today. My brain's on the fritz apparently. Thanks for watching, Bruce, and I'll see you in the next one.